We now know, Liam, the return of the Mackenzie Blackwood deal, which
I was pretty close.
You were pretty close to our guess because we
close.
tried to guess at the end of last show. It's a 7-piece deal, which you don't hear a lot of those anymore. But AB, flash it up. Let's take a look. It ends up being Blackwood, Giovanni Smith, and a 5th-round pick going to Colorado, the 5th rounder in 2027. For Gorgiev at 14% retained, so Liam nailed that part of it. Nikolai Kovalenko, a 5th-round pick in 25 and a 2nd-round pick in 2026. I have a fun history nugget for you.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, I know this.
You know the one.
It's wild.
Back in 1995, the Colorado.
Same day?
I don't think it was the same day.
When I originally read it, I thought it was the same day too. Anyways,
back in 1995, the Colorado Avalanche needed to make a deal to shore up their goaltending. Oh, actually, it was almost. It was on December 6th that year.
Oh, I knew it was close.
The Avalanche needed to make a trade to shore up their goaltending, so they acquired Patrick Waugh from the Montreal Canadiens. In exchange, they had to give up Jocelyn Thibault, Martin Rushinsky, and Andrei Kovalenko.
Oh,
Flash forward to December 9th, 2025, or 30 years later, and it's Nikolai Kovalenko, his son, as the return from Mackenzie Blackwood, who's probably not going to be Patrick Waugh, but they're hoping they get similar results out of him, obviously. But that's the return. So when you kind of want to boil this down, and it's a long-winded way of eventually getting into my Sherwood Ford Giant question, but basically, if you were trying to do this from the Oilers' perspective, you need to think of a 25-year-old forward who's in the lineup. You need to think of the 2nd-round pick, which they could have done. Probably, I mean, Calvin Pickard wouldn't have had to go the other way because that was kind of a money thing. But would you have given up Pud Colson in a second for Mackenzie Blackwood?
Well, I just saw his stats. The fact he has a 9.11 and a 3.0 GAA. Wow. He's doing some work. He's getting shelled.
Well, the thing on San Jose is exactly that. He faces a lot of rubber on some nights. And there's been games where he gives up a handful of goals and he faces 40 shots, so it doesn't matter.
In his last game for them, I know this very well because I bet on this game. He faced 52 shots and only allowed 3.
54.
54. I stopped looking after 52. I was too frustrated.
He faced 40-plus shots 3 times, 35-plus shots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times with the San Jose Sharks. So he was busy. What I do find interesting is that some of his worst performances were the games where he didn't face a lot of rubber. You look at the game against Ottawa. He played the whole game, only faced 11 shots, gave up 4 goals in that game. Gave up 5 goals on 18 shots to the Jets, 4 on 20, 4 on 23, 3 on 23. Like, he had a lot of rough games when he didn't face a lot of rubber, which I think is interesting. I kind of talked to Carter Hutton about that, and he was just like, man, some goalies are wired that way. When they face a lot of rubber, they're very routine, rhythm-orientated, and they just cruise. And if there's the games where it's 20 or less or 25 or less, they sit there, they get cold. I don't know if it's necessary.
They get thinking.
They're
thinking now between shots. When it's just, you just let your natural ability take over because you're getting shelled.
Yeah. So you didn't answer the Sherwood Ford Giant question. Would you have given up a similar package if you were the Oilers for for Mackenzie Blackwood?
Well, if you're doing that, then you're writing off Stu.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. This is Mackenzie Blackwood is now their number 1 goalie. They're doing this because they need a number 1.
Yep.
They traded their number 1 to get a number 1. We're saying we're trading Pickard for Mackenzie Blackwood
because you want to establish a 1A, 1B duo.
Sure, but it's because you have doubts with Skinner. So either if you're on the I like Skinner train, no. If you're still doubting Skinner, then yes, you would do that. But bye Skinner.
Liam?
I think it's interesting because I see what you mean, Jay, but I do think you could really run a 1-2 tandem with the two in his contract
for 1 year.
For 1 year, it is 1 year.
Bye.
They do have a replacement for Podkolzin, but does San Jose want to take on like someone like Podkolzin?
Sure.
Like I know that Podkolzin's bad by
he's younger than Kovalenko, and they took on Kovalenko.
Yeah, but Kovalenko makes a little bit less money. That's not really a factor in this. I don't think I would have done it if I was the Oilers because I just believe in Skinner. But I don't think it's a bad trade by Colorado, and I wouldn't label it as an overpay.
So here's where I'll go.
Grit.
Yeah, good Jamaican hockey player.
Yeah,
it is a good trade for the Avs, but it is an overpay for the Avs.
What makes you think it's an overpay?
Because look at the historical deals. Jake Allen last year at the deadline with term, with half that season or a quarter of that season still, and the season after.
Yeah.
And the Habs kept 50%, and all they had to give up was a 3rd-round pick. So why does Colorado have to give up? Colorado has to retain money on Gorgiev. They get a pending UFA, no term, and they have to give up a higher draft pick, and they have to give up Kovalenko. Why are all four of those
term is left on Gorgiev's deal?
none?
He's
Pending UFA.
But
So they're not paying to
still
get
a
out of
shit
money.
sandwich they have to eat with him.
San Jose has the money. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I just think Blackwood's better than Allen.
I don't think the track record backs that up whatsoever.
I think this year it is. I think
Dude,
actually,
you're the king of the small sample size. What are you talking about?
What do you mean?
You know what I mean.
Like Mackenzie Blackwood last year at an 8.99. It was on San Jose, granted, but go back through his last couple of years in New Jersey. He couldn't stay healthy. And if you're going to get a goalie, the best ability is availability.
Do you know, an interesting comparison is Jonas Korpisalo when LA got him from Columbus. Remember, he was nails for Columbus that year. He was really, really good. Went to LA. Only played 11 games, so they get him earlier in the season, which is good.
Played playoffs.
But yeah, 11 regular season games, 6 in the playoffs because the Oilers eliminated them for the second year in a row.
But okay, tell me that deal then.
Well, it's a bit different because Gavrikov was also in the deal.
Who was the number one shutdown D-man on the market as a rental.
So what was the deal?
I actually don't have it. Was a first and a third. Gavrikov was the first. Korpisalo was the third, who was nails for the entire season, and he cost him a third-round pick.
And they had to give up Jonathan Quick in a deal, of course, too.
Well, yeah, to Columbus.
I don't know. I don't think it's really that bad, especially if
I don't think it's bad, but it is also clearly an overpay.
What if they just re-sign Blackwood?
Sure.
Then will it matter? So in this moment, I guess your answer is it is an overpay because you think it should have been a third.
It's an overpay, but the Avs absolutely had to do it because Blackwood is right now the best goalie on the market. Can he be a legit starter? Yes, if he's healthy.
Doesn't have a choice.
He has to be.
I think this is a great deal for Mike Greer.
Me too. I think
to like push his way through this, being like, no, I'm taking your second, and you're keeping some of Gorgiev.
Because again, if they're sitting and negotiating, Chris McFarland in Colorado has probably 3 deals he can look back on, including that Korpisalo one, and going, rental goalies don't go for more than a third-round pick. Goalies with term don't go for more than a third-round pick. And I know you can say Blackwood's a legitimate starter, but that's still leaning on upside. He hasn't played. I mean, he played 47 games back in 2019, 2020. Then he was a backup. Then he was hurt. Then he was hurt. And then last year he played on the Sharks. Like, he hasn't been a legitimate starter for a team with expectations for 5-6 seasons now, since he was in his early 20s. So again, Chris McFarland could have looked at a bunch of examples and said, I'm giving you a third and maybe a prospect. And Mike Greer held his feet to the fire. I think this was a really good deal for the Sharks. This is an overpay for the Avs, but I don't think they give a shit because they will sleep much better at night.
Yeah, I think it is a win-win. Like,
it's a win-win.
Sure, the Avs might add a slightly overpay because they were desperate. Greer cashed in on that, but now they've got a better goal. They've got a goalie upgrade, which is ultimately the mission there.
The last thing I'll say is Colorado don't have any third-round picks until 2027. So
which might be why they did the 5th-round pick swap. Moves a couple years, sure.
So I think, San Jose honestly just took really good advantage of a bad situation. But some people are putting in the chat, I think Colorado will become instant contenders.
No.
I think they've still got quite a few flaws they got to figure out first.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.